Hey there, my friend, and what we're going to look at today is we're going to look at what constitutes a real partnership. Here's what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss the top 3 things we need to really focus on when creating partnerships, and we're going to dive into 3 sub-contexts, subcategories, sub-things, whatever you want to call it, that we're going to talk about in between those 3. So let's get to it. All right, so with that being said, what we're talking about is what is a real partnership. You know, in business, in life, we need partnerships, right? This isn't a solo journey that we're going to get done all by ourselves. It takes partnerships. And in those partnerships, I'm sure you've had some that have worked and some that haven't. But in today's new economy, moving as fast as it is, I think really our partnerships need to be developed at the top tier right at the beginning, meaning we can't necessarily think that time is going to create better partnerships. We can't think that we can change anyone, their business practices, the way they flow, their workflow, their ideals, their strategies. So I want to share with you 3 components I believe that is the top tier components of a real partnership. So let's get into it. The first component is mutual values and shared goals. Now, what this means is we're going to break this down into 3 separate components. So the first component we're going to talk about is an alignment of objectives. This is to ensure that both parties clearly understand each other's goals and how they align. This creates the foundation of both sides working towards mutual success. So let's dive into that just for a few minutes here. Number 1, when we have an alignment of objectives, right? So say, for example, if your ideal partnership is based on raising the prospect or the customer at this point, their image, credibility, and brand. But the partner you're working with, their goal, their objective, their alignment is to be the most profitable they can. Those 2 will not align, because if the person that's looking to be most profitable wants to cut A, B, C, maybe safety, maybe, some regulatory compliance where they can just shave a little bit off here and make a little bit more, those objectives, if you will, those baseline characteristics will never add up. That's super important. So when you're talking about alignment of your objectives, what I suggest you do is you come straight forward and say, here's my mission. This is how I align, or this is what I really want to do for my prospects, for my customers. And if those 2 don't align, this is why it's number 1. Literally run from that partnership. I don't care how much that individual or that company might meet your needs right now. Find somebody else that has that same alignment of objectives. Very, very, very important. Make sure every single one of your objectives align, because when there's nothing at stake, partnerships are easy. When there's a lot at stake, partnerships become very difficult. All right, number 2 is value proposition. Clearly articulate the value you want to bring to the table. Understand and leverage the strengths of both partners to create a compelling value proposition that benefits both parties. Now, if you don't want to go that deep into the value proposition, then start with, what do you want to bring to this customer? If your service partner does not have that same value alignment, again, run, Forrest, run, because you're going to need to get the heck out of there, and you're going to have to do it fast. This value alignment is so critical. I mean, you could be measuring in objectives and say, yes, yeah, for sure, man, I want to help raise that status of my customer. Yeah, for sure I do. But then when it aligns to the value equation of it, if you're not aligned, it's going to break down. It might seem like this honeymoon at the beginning, but I can guarantee you, just as sure as it's going to get dark tonight, it's going to break down. Number 3 is always schedule regular reviews. Schedule regular check-ins to reassess and realign goals. This helps both parties adapt to changes and ensure they're on track. Here's the thing. If you're not doing this with both your customers and your suppliers, I think you're missing a big piece of the puzzle. You and I both know at certain points, a lot of suppliers, a lot of customers, their ideals or their mandates change based on their business environment. Right? If you were to look at suppliers or customers, say during the pandemic, their overall desire or their overall need might have been getting product to market faster. Nowadays, it's not getting product to market faster. So if you're still operating under the persona of they still want to get product to market faster, you're missing the bigger piece of the puzzle. And the thing with regular reviews is if you don't do them and you miss those pieces of the puzzle, the decisions you make actually are counterintuitive to the growth of the partnership. So for example, if your customer right now is solely focused on reducing costs, hypothetically, right? And you're solely focused on making sure you align with their overall business goals from last year, or maybe business goals from January of this year, and they've changed. Those decisions you are making, although consciously you're going, well, no, that's what they wanted. Unless you rechecked in before you start making these new decisions, you could be making a decision which you think is in alignment with where their goals are and where they want to go, but it's really not. And it's taking you further away from the customer without even knowing it. Right? That's the key about regular reviews. Asking the questions, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we improve on? Asking the questions, here's the goal that I have for you. Here's what all of our decisions are based on, this nucleus, right? And if those decisions on that nucleus have changed, you need to understand what the new nucleus is to revolve all your decisions around. Because if you don't, you're gonna lose, right? Now, number 2 of the top 3 things is transparency and communication. So, number 1 is open communication channels. This means establishing a clear and consistent communication channel. Transparency builds trust, and trust is the cornerstone of any long-term relationship. So, let's dive into that a bit, right? We talk about open communication channels. Now, this isn't just, oh, well, I have a Slack channel. This is, again, reverts back to the regular reviews, right? So regular reviews, open communication channel, they kind of align together. But what this means is, where is the channel? And I'm not talking about like every month we sit down and have a powwow. I'm talking about, hey, if there's a slight thing that you feel we do wrong or a slight thing that you want us to improve on, make sure you tell me right away, because I'd hate for 5, 6, 7 things to pile up. And here's the thing when it comes to a lot of human nature, if you will. I find anyways that a lot of the times it's like, oh, well, it's just a small thing, we're not going to mention it. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 small things add up to a big thing. And probably some of you have been in that position where you feel like you're gunny sacked, right? Where everything was great and then all of a sudden everything's bad. So that's what I mean by that open communication channels, is like, hey, here's something a team member did. And I'm talking both ways. If one of their team members, one of your customers' team members did not treat your team properly, you need to address that before it becomes an issue. Because when we do not address things and we don't have that open communication, issues start skyrocketing. Number 2 is honest feedback. So, encourage and provide constructive feedback. This helps address issues promptly and fosters a culture of continuous improvement. This is on both sides. I believe every partnership, and let's be real here, your partnership with your customer is not as important as your partnership with your supplier, but all of them are mutually important. And when I say that, I don't mean any ill on any customers, but if I have a supplier that's helping you reach your goals, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, and that supplier and I are not seeing eye to eye, it indirectly affects you, right? Or actually it directly affects you. But the thing is, it directly affects you because I didn't do my job properly. So that's why I say this partnership relationship, suppliers and all that, must be built stronger, because they have to be the ones that idealize all of your value that you want to bring to the market, and they will go forward with that value at the forefront. Like, that value is paramount in everything they do. But the honest feedback loop that we get from it is absolutely astronomical. So again, things like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What can I improve on? If you initiate that feedback loop with your suppliers and with your customers, it allows you to reciprocate. Okay, so now I understand what some of the issues are with me. Let me share some of the challenges that my team might be having with your team. Bang. And now all of a sudden it's mutual. It's not a one-sided thing. And this is where a lot of people get the hair on their back up, and they start, they're like, whoa, they get very defensive, because if you start with what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what can we improve on, you're putting it on yourself. Then you automatically are able to go back and say, okay, here's the constructive feedback from my team. Let's resolve it together. We'll resolve ours, you'll resolve yours. Number 3 is shared information. Be open to sharing relevant information, whether it's about market trends, performance metrics, or internal challenges. This shared knowledge helps in making informed decisions and strengthens the partnership. Now, some of you might be thinking, Dan, are you serious? You want me to share some of these issues that I'm having in my company? What if the customer thinks I'm not professional? Here's my opinion on it. If it's a relationship that's meant to be long-term, I think we need to share these things. It's like saying I'm going to get married and I'm never going to share anything, any issues, any challenges I'm having, any mental difficulties with my partner. I don't think that's feasible. And I don't think long-term relationships in business are feasible either unless both parties fully understand what exactly it is that we're bringing to the table. That's the big difference. And when we can share these things, hey, listen, I'm having a challenge today, right? Like if you look at it, if you've ever been in a business where finances are tight and maybe you've got great assets, but the liquid's tight, that conversation with your partners or with your customers goes a hell of a long way. And yes, it might be uncomfortable for 2 minutes, but the progress and the overall benefit far outweighs that being uncomfortable for 2 minutes. So open up those channels and share information as much as you can. Almost to the point where you get a little TMI action going on, a little too much information, but that's the key element here, is sharing to a point where you both understand exactly what's happening. And here's one thing when it comes to sharing information. You've probably been there. I know I've been there a million times. In my head, I understand the context. And if I don't relate that context to my supplier, to my customer, to the individual I'm trying to work with, even though I understand it, it will not make sense in their mind, right? So relaying that information and having that honest feedback loop is so critical. Number 3, and I know y'all been waiting for this, this is where we talk about the commitment to excellence and reliability. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to get into the 3 things, but a commitment to excellence and reliability. This, I think, goes all the way back to option 1, where we say if we have aligned values, if we have an alignment of an understanding, if we're both into it with the same objectives, right? Then I think automatically we align when it comes to the commitment for excellence and reliability. Now, whether that excellence is leveling up your customer's image, credibility, and brand, or that excellence is finding a way to make whatever you're doing cheaper because the customer needs a reduced price. Whatever that excellence is, in order to achieve the goals, that's what we look at, right? That's really the opportunity, and that's how you become very reliable. It's based on the customer's goals, not necessarily your goals. This is where your ICP, your ideal customer profile, really comes into play. Because if you have a customer whose their nucleus is cheap rates, cheap cost, like keeping costs to a bare minimum, but your ICP is somebody that truly understands you're an asset to their business. And yes, you will get them the best possible deal, but you might not always be the cheapest because you want to use quality people. You want to only, work within, call it an A tier or a top tier, a tier 1 supplier. That's where things get convoluted. And that's where this last one, the commitment to excellence and reliability, sometimes gets skewed. So let's get into it. Number 1 is consistency. So deliver on promises, consistency. Reliability builds trust and shows that you are a dependable partner. This piece of the puzzle goes right back to something I've said for years now. If you are going to request somebody do something, you make sure you uphold your end of the deal. So for example, if I'm working with you and you say, okay, here's what I need from you. And I say to you, and say we're in the rating phase, okay? And I say to you, okay, if I get you these numbers by tomorrow at 2 p.m., will you have a chance to look at them by the next day at, say, noon? Yes, I will. Okay, let's schedule a meeting. Now, my objective is, again, we go back to 1 and 2. My objective, in order to maintain that partnership, that real trust, is to get it to them tomorrow before 2. Okay? Secondly, If we talk about consistency, consistency starts in your prospecting. If I were you, I suggest you share with the prospects when you're going to be getting back to them. I'm going to be getting back to you in 3 days if I don't hear from you. And what I suggest you do is you make sure you follow up in those 3 days. I've always operated with this modus operandi. One is that I always believe my customers are writing down when I say I'm going to do something, as I believe all of my partners are. So if I say something's going to happen on this day at this time, I have to make sure it happens. That to me is the cornerstone of consistency, okay? Consistency in your message, consistency in who you are. This is where a lot of salespeople fall short because when they're trying to sell, they're somebody else. They're not themselves. And so when you sell somebody on your product or service and you're selling it as this individual, and then when you come into the relationship, you're this individual, that consistency is broken. So you've actually just created a wedge between you and your prospect that can grow deeper if you don't address it. So that's number one. Number two is quality assurance. So maintain high standards of quality in your products and service. This reassures your partners and your customers of your commitment to excellence. So quality, quality, quality over quantity, right? I've often, an old company I was at, there was a great message as you were walking down the main stairs of the office, and it said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So I believe quality assurance comes with hard work. Quality assurance comes with that constant review of information, that consistency, right? That getting the right people on the bus, as Simon Sinek said, at the first time instead of trying to, that comes from an ICP. So all of these are kind of dovetailed off of each other and stacked on top of each other. So that idea of quality assurance, what kind of steps, what checks, what balances can you put in your business to ensure quality, and I'm talking top tier quality, is always bar none. You look at companies like Apple. They can charge bigger prices because of the quality of their product. Now, Apple's not everybody's go-to. Some people are Google, some people are Android, some people are other companies that they're just, no, Apple does not do it for me. This is the cat's ass, not Apple. And that's understandable. Everybody has their own. But if they didn't focus on quality and only one company did, everybody would eventually go to that company because, yes, we all enjoy a deal. Let's call a spade, right? We enjoy a deal. But the thing is, if we get a deal and the quality is very low, we're going to return that deal regardless of how much it costs. I've heard so many people say, oh, well, you got to buy top name brands. And I disagree with that for a lot of the times because top name brand shirts deteriorate just as well as Walmart shirts, right? The material might be different, but the quality and long-term assurance is not there in certain aspects. Other clothing companies, it is. And I'll pay the premium to get that clothing to last me a long time, right? It's like vehicles. What kind of vehicle do you want that doesn't break down? I had a couple of trucks before where literally 1,000 kilometers after the warranty, I found things started breaking down. What do? I'm no longer in those vehicles. I chose a different manufacturer because I wanted the quality assurance, and I'm sure you're the same way. Number three is flexibility and adaptability. This is being willing to adapt to changing circumstances and needs. Flexibility demonstrates your commitment to the partnership and the ability to navigate challenges together. This is critical in every business environment. If you cannot navigate challenges together, I'm not saying there's never going to be issues. I have business partners. Some days I get off the phone calls and I'm like, oh my Lord, this is absolutely asinine. But I understand it's all about flexibility and adaptability. I know in the end, our partners are all focused on the same goal. Everybody might have a different route to get there. That's the flexibility part. The adaptability part is saying the way we sold today is not the way we sold 3 months ago. It's probably not even the way we sold a year ago. It's definitely not the way we sold during COVID. So all of these things are constantly changing. There's a constant fluctuation and riding of waves that goes on in every sales business. That is so important to have that flexibility and adapt new strategies, new practices, new abilities, even based on where you're going. Like for example, myself, after I survived throat cancer, I had to adopt to a new way of selling because I physically, at this point in time in my life, cannot speak all day long and expect to have a voice the next day. So I can do wicked amounts of sales calls one day, but then I'm down for a day or two. how is that helping my productivity? So I had to get extremely, insanely good at email marketing, because I can do a few calls and substitute it with email. That's adapting to a new environment or a new process. That's super, super important. So if you got value in this video, I highly encourage you to smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel and be notified when I release new videos. We're going to be putting a huge emphasis on our YouTube channel and our positioning ourselves on YouTube. So we got a ton more content coming up for you. Make sure you subscribe. Until next time, my friends, remember, go out there, make every call educational, and crush your sales. We'll see you next time.